So Nextflow is both a language and a tool. Kwan was just talking to me about WDL and CWL, and there's other tools available which are kind of similar. One of the things that Nextflow has is that it's both a language and a tool together, which means that the two kind of are very intertwined and kind of develop together. So as soon as there are new features in Nextflow and in language that are immediately available in the runtime. So it's a language for building workflows. And then within the anatomy of a workflow then is that each chunk of a workflow, each step, each script that you would run yourself manually is called a process. And those processes are linked together via things called channels. And then the whole thing is encapsulated within one or more workflows. So you've got processes linked by channels, and that's brought together within a workflow. One of the simplest Nextflow pipelines you could build might look like this. This just runs fastqc. And here you can see we're defining a process block, which is called fastqc. It's got our script block there, which is just a bash script. It could be a Python script or an R script or anything. It doesn't really matter what the language is. And you can see there we've got $input, which is variable, and that relates to the input channel. And we also define the outputs that we expect. That process is then linked down in the workflow below, and we've got a channel which is saying, take our input of FASTQ files here and run them through fastqc. And what Nextflow will implicitly handle the parallelization of this for you. And that's one of the real strengths of Nextflow then, is that you write your script in quite a simple way, and Nextflow knows how to make that as parallelizable as possible. So everything runs as quickly and efficiently as possible. Nextflow also gives you, the technical term is reentrancy, but basically if you close your laptop lid or lose your internet connection or something and it crashes halfway through, you can rerun the pipeline with the resume flag, and it will pick up where it left off, and it will use cached results of earlier successful steps in the pipeline. And it gives you this reusability of your code. You write the pipeline once and you can use it on any different data. So Nextflow is a language. And underneath that language layer, it gives you a lot more. So the language layer then is extended by configuration. And within the configuration, we can tie in software and also different compute. So what do I mean here? So Nextflow has built-in support to handle where your code language lives. So typically in a Git repository. So you can share your pipeline code on GitHub or Bitbucket or any of these providers, and then just do Nextflow run of the name of the repository, and Nextflow will automatically fetch that pipeline and manage versions and branches and tags for you. Nextflow will also tie into many different ways of handling software requirements, from Conda through to Docker, Singularity, and others like Podman and Charlie Cloud. And this means that when you run a pipeline, you don't have to think about installing all the different tools. As long as you've got Nextflow and say Singularity installed, all of the software required for that pipeline will be automatically available and handled, and all the versions will be very specific and reproducible. And finally, compute. Basically, if I'm running this on my laptop when I'm building it, I can then upload it onto my HPC and run it with Slurm on my traditional cluster, or I could put it onto the cloud and run it on AWS or Azure or Google. Basically, Nextflow supports most compute environments, which makes these pipelines super portable. No matter how you're running your analysis, Nextflow should be able to handle running on your compute infrastructure. If there's anything you're going to remember from all this, just remember that doing your analysis using a Nextflow pipeline makes it very reproducible and also very portable across different systems. And this is generally sort of a good thing. Okay, so that's Nextflow. Excuse me, sorry. So Nextflow is a language, it's a tool, and you can use it in two ways. You can run workflows that have been written by someone else, or you can write your own. And what I've just been going through is kind of a general concepts of how it works under the hood. And that's useful if you want to go off and build your own workflow. What I'm going to come on to now is this kind of sister project called NF Core. Nextflow was built originally at the CRG in Barcelona, the Centre for Genomic Regulation, and Cedric Notre Dame's group, and it's now by Paolo de Tomaso, and it's now been spun out into a company called Seqera, which is where I work. And NF Core is a community project which I co-founded with Alex Peltzer. So how does NF Core differ to Nextflow? What are these two? NF Core spun out of work that we were doing in Sweden at the National Genomics Infrastructure, where we were building many Nextflow pipelines and starting to share them with other researchers and come up with guidelines and standardization for the pipelines we wrote. We realized there was no reason to limit this just to our institute or our country. And so we started this NF Core community as a community effort to really bring people together on these pipelines, which are now so portable. There's no reason for people to be each developing their own pipelines, doing similar things in their own silos. We could all come together and collaborate on a single code base and come up with a set of best practices. So that's what NF Core is. It's a community effort which now offers 73 different pipelines off the shelf. And when I mean that, if I just hop out of here and jump into a web browser, if I go to the NF Core website up here, and if I click View Pipelines, there is a massive list of available pipelines here, which you can just run. All you need to have is Nextflow installed. You do Nextflow run NF Core methyl-seq, and you've got a pipeline for doing DNA methylation analysis, which should work straight out the box. You want to work with RNA-seq or small RNA-seq or HLA typing, or, there's all of these workflows are built for different types of data analysis and different types of data. And so these are all ready to go. So that's a huge resource, which is hopefully very useful for you. As well as pipelines, we also work on tooling. And this is sort of an ecosystem of tooling around Nextflow. It's not actually required for running any of the pipelines that we create, but it helps people both use pipelines and also to develop pipelines. And this is really necessary when we have such a large community of people working together on a single code base. We need automated testing, and we have all these developer tools which help you create new pipeline code, basically. And finally, kind of newest in the slide deck is this idea of Nextflow modules and sub-workflows, which are kind of components of Nextflow pipelines. We now have, and so if I go to the NF Core website, again, I can click on modules, and each module then is like a single process within a pipeline, and that can be shared across different pipelines. So now if I search for FastQC here, you can see that there is a module for running FastQC. And the same chunk of Nextflow code can be shared across many of the different pipelines. So if we fix a bug here, we can easily bring it out to all the pipelines which you're using. It also means that you can use this library of modules to build pipelines very quickly. And sub-workflows are somewhere in between. So this is a really powerful new thing that's available within NF Core. A few things which kind of make NF Core a bit different to other workflow registries. Firstly, we have this very strong focus of developing with the community. So if you bring your pipeline to NF Core, it's not really owned by you or anyone anymore. It's an NF Core community pipeline, and anyone who's interested can use it and contribute to it. And we really want you to kind of come and talk to us and develop the pipeline with the community rather than coming with a finished product. We have an NF Core pipeline template, and we say that every pipeline must use the same template, and that means all the boilerplate code which we write is shared between them. All the pipelines, they all work in the same way, and any bug fixes can be automatically synchronized across all pipelines. And we have, again, strong focus on collaboration, and a big part of that, the reason we started NF Core was to stop people rebuilding the same pipelines, and for that reason we have one pipeline per data type and analysis type. So we have one pipeline for doing RNA-seq analysis, and you don't have to pick which one you want. And if people come, and if that pipeline is missing features that you want, you go and add that to the existing pipeline rather than creating a new pipeline from scratch. That being said, the tooling that we build and on all these things that we build within the NF Core are really for everyone. And all that surrounding ecosystem of tools that we build is designed to work with any Nextflow pipeline. So we've developed some new standards, community standards, such as the Nextflow schema and various other helper tools, and they work with any Nextflow pipeline. It doesn't have to be an NF Core pipeline. And you can also use all this tooling and these modules to build your own pipeline outside of the NF Core ecosystem if you'd like to, and that's encouraged. And what's these new DSL2 modules bring is this ability to collaborate on components within pipelines, which is really powerful. So if you're in a situation where you're building a new pipeline and maybe it can never be part of NF core because of politics or because it's super specific, you can still work with DSL2 modules and sub workflows and collaborate back on those with the community whilst keeping your own bespoke pipeline. This is a bit abstract. So if I can have the luxury of a bit of time, and I'll do a quick live demo for you all, and we'll see what breaks. Hopefully you can all see my terminal here. I'm in an empty directory, and you can see I've got this helper tool that we've built within NF core, which is called NF core, and this is a Python package, so it's just pip install NF core. And you can see there's a bunch of stuff it does here. Some of these things are for users, so kind of listing and launching pipelines in a friendly way. And some of these are for people developing pipelines. What I'm going to try and do quickly now is build a new pipeline from scratch using DSL2 modules, just to show you how easy it is to use these components that we've created. So if I do NF core create, it will take me through a little wizard. I can say that I want my pipeline to be called NF core test. This is a test pipeline. And my name is Phil. And if I wanted to, I could at this point remove all the NF core branding. If it's not a genomics pipeline, I could remove the parts of the template which are to do with genomics, things like that. But for now, I'm just going to say leave it as the default kind of setup. Great. You can see I've now got a directory here called NF core test. And if I just open up VS Code in here, get a bit bigger, you can see I've got a whole ton of stuff in here. And this is basically a fully fledged best practices Nextflow pipeline now. And if I want to, I could even, if I make a testing directory, I can do Nextflow run parent directory -profile test docker the results, and this should hopefully run. So this is a fully fledged Nextflow workflow which works out of the box. And here you can see the template comes with modules for FastQC and multi-QC, and even comes with some tiny test data. So when I run this, it's actually genuinely running FastQC and multi-QC in the background using Docker. So that's pretty cool, but I don't want it to do that. I want it to do some other stuff. There's a couple of helper tools. I can do NF core lint, for example, or if I do modules lint, it can check all of the modules that I have installed in the pipeline and see if there's any updates or see if there's anything wrong. And sure enough, here it's telling me that there are new versions available of the FastQC module and this one called dump software versions. So I can now do NF core modules updates. And what this command will do is it will pull in new versions of these centrally organized modules. So now if I do git status, you can see it's modified these files. This file just keeps track of which modules are installed at which version. So if I do git diff, you can see that the git sha has changed where we got FastQC from. And if I go into this file, you can see these are the things which have been adjusted in this version of this pipeline of this module, sorry, since it was last updated. I can also install new modules which have been created by the community. So if I do NF core modules install, then I can look for example, I don't know, BWA mem align. BWA, sorry, mem2 mem. There we go. And if I do git status, you can see it's created a new folder in here underneath modules with this new process. So it's a little chunk of Nextflow code which runs BWA mem. So I don't have to think too much about how to build this whole process. It's already been done for me by someone else in the community. And I can just plug this into my workflow now. And in fact, it even gives me the include statement that I need to use. So I could just copy that, go into the Nextflow workflow and kind of stick it in. And off I go. I'm ready to start using this process within my workflow. So you can see this is a super powerful way to build pipelines with the community, even custom pipelines, which are never going to be within NF core. So don't be put off by NF core because you think you have a very specific use case. There's still probably a lot here which might be useful for you. So NF core is massive now. It started off probably about 2018 or so. So it's not been going that long, 4 years. and really has gone beyond my wildest dreams and expectations at the start. As of, I think I updated this slide a couple of days ago, and we just hit recently 4,000 people using the NF Core Slack chat, which is amazing. And that's an incredible resource in itself, just that we have so many people working with bioinformatics and workflows. And we have a channel for every single pipeline. So if you're using the AttackSeek pipeline or the ChipSeek pipeline and you're having problems, you can hop onto the Slack, go to the channel for that pipeline and chat directly to developers and other people using that workflow to get help. So that community resource is super strong and really, really powerful and really helpful, both for people developing new pipelines and also newcomers who are just trying to get to grips with Nextflow and trying to run pipelines. We have, many hundreds of people who are actually contributing code now. And you can see we've got 73 pipelines, I think I said, but over 90 different Git repositories on GitHub, and with tens of thousands of pull requests and commits. So the quantity of work that goes into this community is phenomenal. And it's really turned into a massive resource now. We're pretty global. We started off in Europe, just the same as Nextflow. You tend to find that there's a bit of a geographical kind of bias for different tools, depending on kind of who you know and what you're used to. So Nextflow has always had a stronger user base in Europe, but we are now spreading out to the US and elsewhere in the world. And we've got quite a strong presence in Asia now as well. And we're really pushing diversity and inclusion within the project. And in fact, we're really lucky to have funding from the Chan Zuckerberg initiative now for 3 different grant cycles. So that partly pays for my salary and two guys on my team who are based in Brazil and also responsible for Asia Pacific. And we're really keen on kind of pushing diversity and inclusion right globally. And you can see that in many of the events that we run, where we try and promote different time zones and different regions and things like that. So it's really exciting to see how this community has grown and how much fun it is to be part of it. If you want to see more, of course, there's the NF Core website with tons of documentation and stuff. And there's also a Nature Biotech paper that came out in 2020, which is pretty short, just kind of goes over the key principles. And if you dive into the supplementals, has quite a lot of information about how we built the infrastructure and the reasoning for why we did things. It's probably getting a bit out of date now, to be honest, this paper, but it's quite a nice read over a cup of coffee. And if you're interested, then please do hop over onto the website and hit the big green button top right saying join NF Core. We've got Slack and Twitter and everything. I need to update this slide because we added a Mastodon channel the other day, if anyone else is running away from Twitter. So we've got several kind of channels to join in and follow along. So it's dead easy to join in. Right, then for the final part of my talk, I want to just mention this third tool called Nextflow Tower. So I mentioned in passing that the guy who wrote Nextflow, Paolo, spun out a company together with Evan Floden called Seqera, which is where I now work. And their kind of flagship product is called Nextflow Tower. And what this is it's a web interface, basically. And if you're running lots of Nextflow pipelines, it can be difficult to keep track of all the different pipelines you're running at the same time, where they're still running, whether any have had errors, and also just thinking about all the interface for all the different parameters which are available. Excuse me. So Nextflow Tower is kind of a web interface onto this. And what's really quite unique about Tower is it doesn't give you a compute infrastructure. It's not tied to any single compute infrastructure. It will tie into whatever you have available. So if you want to run your Nextflow pipelines on your own HPC cluster, or even your laptop if you really want to, you can still do that through Tower. And Tower can also connect to all the different clouds as well. So it has some really nice features, such as being able to set up infrastructure for you on AWS, which is not an easy thing to do. So Tower kind of is a really easy input to see where you're running Nextflow and to manage all the different workflows you're running. It's got kind of 3 different ways of using Tower. There's an open source community version, which is a bit out of date now, but we're hoping to get back up to kind of parity soon with the main product. Then there's a cloud version, which is cloud.tower.nf, which anyone can use for your own workflows, which has both free and paid tiers, but the free tiers would be fine for most people. And it's getting started. And then we have kind of the enterprise model where companies can run offsite. So Seqera runs this kind of open core idea where we try and make as much of our software open source as possible, and then have kind of an enterprise offering on the top of that to actually keep us all employed. But Tower is a really, really useful tool. So I do recommend checking it out if you're running Nextflow pipelines. And for me, it kind of gives a bit of icing on the cake, really, on top of all this power that comes under the hood with Nextflow and NF Core. Right, I'm finishing up a little bit early. Apologies for that. I've got a bit of a cold, so I hope you can all hear me through my kind of rumbly voice today. Just want to give a couple of shout outs here. And we had the Nextflow Summit, which is, we used to have an annual event and it all kind of came crashing to a halt with COVID, but we had an event in 2022 just a few weeks ago in Barcelona, which was a lot of fun. It was a 3-day event paired together with an NF Core hackathon, and all of the talks from that event are up online on the summit.nextflow.io. So there's some really, really excellent talks there. So do go and check it out if you're at all interested, and you might find some talks about topics you're particularly interested in or anything like that. And then looking forward, we have the next 2 events that we're planning are in March next year. So we've got free online Nextflow and NF Core training in March. We actually ran that before this hackathon for the first time. We thought we'd do a bit of training just before the hackathon, so anyone who wanted to join the hackathon but wasn't feeling confident could kind of join in. We thought we'd have about 50 people for the hackathon, so we'd get, I don't know, 30 or 40 people coming to a training. We had over 800 people sign up, which was a bit of a shock. So hopefully we'll be a bit better prepared in March for similar numbers, but it went really, really well. People were really positive about it. So this is definitely something we're going to keep pushing going forward. So do check that out if you're interested. It's just free online. And then the next NF Core hackathon will be in March. That will be a primarily online event, but this time we're going to trial a new format where we're hoping that people can create their own kind of little local events. So just book out a meeting room in your institute and get a few people together there. So you can kind of sit with some friends while you do some coding, maybe meet some new people who are in the region, and then kind of follow along all together online as part of a larger hackathon. So yeah, look out for those in March if you're at all interested. It's a great way to get involved in the community, get up to speed, and have a lot of fun. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Phil. If anyone has a question, feel free to just, I think we have a sizable audience, so we just unmute yourself, it's fine. Or I guess, Justice, would you like to ask yourself, or you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentations. My question is, have you tried to take Nextflow in the low-income country where there's like the connections is not stable?
Yeah, absolutely. We're running mentorships at the moment. We've just actually closed applications, I'm afraid, for the second round of mentorships, but we did a first round with 5 people, and we had several people from countries like Nepal, for example, which turned out to have really poor internet connections, which was quite a big problem for training, and a few other countries all over the world. So it's not a new problem, and also many people are running Nextflow in highly secure environments which don't have internet connections. So actually, for where I was working before this year in Sweden at the National Genomics Infrastructure, our HPC cluster, which we were running all of our analysis on, was completely severed from the internet. It ran entirely offline. So the good news is that all of the NF Core pipelines, one of the requirements we have for NF Core pipelines is that they must be able to work offline. And so it's set up for that, really. There's a documentation page dedicated to how to run offline, but basically you can download the pipeline code. You can prefetch all of the software that's required. If you need to deploy that then onto a secondary machine, you can do that. And then once everything is available locally, you can run the pipeline. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I think you're muted.
Abkadir, do you like to unmute and ask, or would you like me to ask?
Yeah, do you want me just to go through the questions? Or...
Yeah, that would be nice. Oh, I think he's unmuting.
So let me ask. So can we fully control where the data is stored, like especially for the sensitive data needing HIPAA compliance?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So there's kind of 3 different data locations for a typical Nextflow run. You have your input data, you have your working directories, which is where Nextflow runs. So one of the differences between Nextflow and other workflow managers actually is that Nextflow isolates each task. So every time you run FastQC on one FastQ file, for example, it creates a new directory and runs all of that in isolation. And it's only the output files which come through, which is really nice, actually. Sorry, this is a tangent because you don't need to think about file names. So you have your work directories in the middle when the pipeline is running. And then we have the output directory or the published directory, which is where the finished files, which are the result of the pipeline, are saved. So exactly how you set those up depend on your compute infrastructure. If you're running on an HPC or a traditional infrastructure, they can just be 3 different directories. If you're running on the cloud, they can be 3 different sets of S3 buckets. But basically, Nextflow is super flexible for working with whatever compute infrastructure you have. We have lots and lots of people running in pharmaceutical companies, in public health, lots of people working with genomics and very sensitive data. And it's absolutely no problem to run Nextflow in those secure environments typically.
Got it. Thanks so much.
Wait for other question. I have a question, Phil. So there's other, community members that are doing like related things. So like, how do you interact with like other? I want to make sure I get the names correct. So there's obviously Galaxy, which I think, started back in the day before the workflow language. There's Terra, which, is an environment where people can deploy their pipeline. How do you compare or collaborate with all these other, reproducible genomics effort?
Yeah, absolutely. We were saying before the recording started, I was saying that generally I say to people that the main thing is that you use a workflow manager, and I don't mind too much which one it is because any workflow manager is much better and more reproducible and better than just doing stuff manually with bash scripts. So many of these tools have overlapping sets of functionality. So which one works best for you will depend a lot on what it is you're trying to do. It will depend a bit on who you work with and what their experience is and everything. And but generally, I mean, yeah, it's kind of up to you which one you use. In terms of us collaborating with these other communities, there is a little bit of overlap. Like we know we've chatted quite a bit to some of the people working in these other projects, and we have talked about setting up more collaborations, for example, things like test data, which any of these, it doesn't matter which workflow language you're using, it's useful to have a set of test data. So that's been flagged as something we might be able to collaborate on. There's probably more we could do, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah,
definitely. And are all the pipeline and the core follow a certain license? I guess they're all MIT or?
Yeah, that's one of the requirements for NF Core, is that every pipeline has to be MIT licensed.
That's great. Okay, does anyone else have last questions? Okay, I think if not, I'm sure actually the short format is great for people to review on YouTube. I'm sure a lot of people will check it out. Phil, do you have any last words, or you share all your thoughts?
No, I tried to, I tried to keep things not too in depth because you never quite know who's going to join the meeting. So if you're interested, please do join us on the NF Core Slack, get involved, follow some training, and give it a try. One of the things I'd really like to emphasize is that I think our community, I mean, obviously biased, but I think our community is super fun, really welcoming group of people, so be very happy to hopefully see some of you on Slack and happy to help out if there's any need.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Phil. It's a pleasure having you, and be in touch. And I'm sure here everyone can go on NF Core, their website is there. and look forward to see you next time. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.